the glass, and by a faint light we see. Still there is more gladness, longing for the sight than to behold or be filled by anything. There's a river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy ever full will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom. There is a far, far kingdom there at the end of the sea, where they know my name. And until that far, far kingdom calls me home, oh my soul, I will wait for the river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy ever full will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom.
There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, manna on the ground, no matter where I go. I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you got. There's honey in the rock. Praying for a miracle, thirsty for the living word. Only you can satisfy.
Good morning. Riley, can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was trying not to yell. Good morning, Manhattan Christian College. That's just not good enough. Good morning, Manhattan Christian College. There we go. There's some enthusiasm. We love enthusiasm, right? So I get the privilege of being the third string announcement giver today. Kevin is not here today. He's taking a well-deserved day off. We're proud of him. So he asked JR to be here. JR couldn't be here. He's sick. So then they came to me and said, would you mind helping out? So I am the privileged third string announcement giver today. So bear with me as we go through these things. I just want to tell you guys thank you for being here this morning. We're excited to worship together. We're excited to be here together. Probably one of my favorite things about Manhattan Christian College is being here on Thursday mornings with you all, and I'm very grateful for this team that's up here and excited to hear them today. Announcements. Men's basketball heading to the conference tournament today. They play tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Excited for those guys. It looks like they are going to watch it online in the loft tomorrow at 8 p.m. Sunday, 2 o'clock p.m., there is a movie in the loft. You should be there if you don't have any other place to go. All right, and then soccer intramurals are coming. The sign-up is happening. 5 players per team. Only 2 men's or women's soccer players per team, okay? And you must have a co-ed team, which means you can't be all guys or all girls. Does that make sense? Sign up with Kevin. Sign up with Kevin. And then executive petitions are due for student government, student council, and they are due to Kevin's office next week, Thursday. We are excited to worship today. I'm going to turn it over to the team, and we are going to get going.
I'm going to start us off reading Ephesians 4:15 through 16, and it says, "Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work."
I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. Just when I ran out of the road, I met a man I didn't know, and he told me that I was not alone. He picked me up, turned me around, and placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because you healed my heart, you changed my name, forever free, I'm not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. I cannot deny what I've seen. Got no choice but to believe. My doubts are burning like ashes in the wind. So long to my old friends, burden and bitterness, you can't just keep them moving. Now you ain't welcome here. Now till I walk the streets of gold, I'll sing of how you saved my soul. This wayward
My relationship with her was and is complicated. Early on, I was pretty smitten. I mean, I didn't date a lot, so when I first noticed her, I thought, oh, wow, she is so incredible and so beautiful. Like, so amazing. And fortunately, we had a common friend that introduced us, and we slowly got to know each other. There was no doubt in my mind that she was just absolutely gorgeous. I guess I outkicked my coverage, right? Over the years, we had some great times together. And some of the hard times, it was my relationship with her that actually kept me going. Like any relationship, ours was very romantic at first. I loved all of her qualities. She could do no wrong. I mean, no wrong at all. Looking back, I think that's why I put my hope in her. It was easy because the relationship was just so perfect, kind of euphoric. Today I realize that was probably an unwise decision. This might be TMI, but it's good for me to tell you that as great as the highs were, the lows were of equal caliber. Early on, there was much talk of divorce. I didn't know if she was going to divorce me first or if I was going to divorce her first. There were days that divorce seemed better than staying together. Some of you don't know this about my chapter and about this chapter in my life, but I made the move to divorce her first. But not before she inflicted much pain. I guess those that are closest to you are the ones that can inflict the most pain to you. It's not appropriate here to show you the scars that she left. Some pretty deep wounds, and disfiguring in a way. If you knew me before the divorce, you would probably say I am different now. Intense pain has a way of forming and shaping you, doesn't it? And after those early years, I almost didn't recognize myself. The hurt and accusations from her and her family, and the lies and the gossip were just unimaginable. And like a lot of relationships, we kind of worked things out a little bit, and we got back together. In one sense, I'm not surprised. In spite of all the difficult times, I think there was love there. But there were still what you might call irreconcilable differences. And that pattern repeated itself, separation and together and separation and together. And because of the dysfunction of the relationship, I turned to others who were experts in this area. And I remember reading a well-respected, nationally known expert, and they said, hey, you've got to put all of your hope in her. Everything. Go all in. And I feel silly now, but I completely did it. Others in my generation did it too, so it's not like I was the only one. It's kind of what you did back then. Put all of your hope into her. I remember proudly proclaiming my love and devotion to her. I was not ashamed to even start conversations and declare my love. Not in many conversations, that's exactly what I led with. Like, not those chit-chat conversations, but as you started to really get to talking to someone, I was so proud of her, and I wanted them to know how much I was in love with her and how amazing she was and how crazy for her that I was. I remember at one point in one of those conversations, a person in my life called me out on it. We were in his kitchen, and it was one of those times of difficulty, and he directly told me, well, that's your problem. You're too idealistic about her. There's no such thing as an ideal bride. I remember being angry at the time, kind of dug in, defended her, but I guess Rick was right. And that probably leads to some of the complication in our relationship. I'm not always proud of her anymore. I'm more realistic about our relationship, not really crazy in love. She's got some obvious deformities. Some would even call it disfigurement. She doesn't always act right in public. And she's actually hurt people close to me. And for some, she doesn't have a good reputation at all. And for me, of course, there's still the intentional and unintentional pain that she inflicts. You see, my relationship with the church was and is complicated. And as I talk to those in my generation and in younger generations, I've discovered that there are many who have been hurt by her, the church. Some here today, perhaps many, might be able to relate. And I don't want to pretend like I speak for everyone who has experienced her hurt, but since I knew I was preaching on the church, it was either this or sin. And I'm like, oh gosh, how do you choose? I've been thinking a lot. Last fall in the Movements in Christian Spirituality class, the whole semester we look at different periods of time and how Christians worked to reform different parts of the church. One of those class periods, we just started sharing stories with each other, and it really got me thinking. This is true of me. It might not be true of you, but I think this is a pretty descriptive statement of where I was and maybe still a little am. I put my hope in and trusted the bride instead of taking my place in the bride. I can't expect the bride to be the king. In Scripture, the church is the bride of Christ, the wife of the king. That shouldn't be surprising to us. In the Old Testament, Israel was a people for her king, right? The church is the renewed Israel. And so Jesus' aim to restore Israel resulted in this formation of a new community built around him, who would believe and receive the kingdom blessings that God had for the whole world, and that was going to happen through Israel. And through Israel, God moves in redemption and restoration. But Israel was repeatedly unfaithful. One author says it this way, that Christ's church often plays the harlot, just as Israel played the harlot in Hosea's day. That imagery is reflective of the Hebrew Scriptures, where the bride in the Song of Solomon stands as a stark contrast to the whore in Hosea. The former looks only to her beloved, and the latter looks after other lovers. The former pursues intimacy, and the latter seeks autonomy. And God will not abandon us to our autonomy. He pursues us as a jealous lover. You see, a prostitute is used and then discarded. But God, being that jealous lover, pursues his people, his community. And through the unfaithfulness, God does not turn his back on his people, Israel. Jesus also does not turn his back on his bride, no matter how broken she is. And in fact, Jesus sacrifices himself for her. And we could assume, and probably correctly assume, that she would sacrifice for him according to the social norms at the time. But in Ephesians 5, Paul flips that for us. In Ephesians 5, Paul writes, "For husbands, this means love your wives as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her to make her holy and clean. Washed by the cleansing of God's word, he did this to present her to himself as a glorious church, without a spot or wrinkle or any other blemish. Instead, she will be holy and without fault." Christ sacrifices for his bride so that she is made clean. And that word has a sense of purging from evil and to make her holy, to set her apart from the world. And I trust that Scripture is true when it says that. But at times, it sure doesn't seem like the church is set apart from the world, does it? It seems at times like the church and the world have hooked up. I personally wrestle with that. But Paul's point is still unbelievable, isn't it? Here is the most direct place in the New Testament in which Jesus is said to love his church, and he gave himself up. He sacrificed himself to make her holy. It's impossible for the church to make herself holy. It just doesn't work. It's Christ's work, not ours. But that's a hard truth, isn't it? Because we want to show people that we are worthy, and we want to show that we have value. We want to prove that we aren't as dirty as we look. We want to do our part and not be freeloaders on holiness. Some people misunderstand holiness as a better-than-you arrogance. But the foundation of holiness is Christ's work. And there's no room for boasting. And so it's odd today, I think, when people in the church project a better-than-you attitude. Like, the church simply can't engage the world with self-righteousness. It just doesn't work. The church can't engage the world with a haughty attitude, but that's what's common. And so maybe it would be good for people in the church to remember our past before we lash out on culture. And I know we've got to speak the truth in love, but we can't use the truth to shame and beat people up, right? Secondly, Paul says in Ephesians 4 that Jesus presents his bride, picture this, as a radiant bride, blameless, without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. It's not enough for Christ just to clean her up. right? He makes her glowing. I've been to a lot of weddings, and the bride is always perfect. I remember my wedding day. The bride was perfect. The doors opened. Well, the doors kind of opened. One got stuck, so she had to squeeze through. But when she came through, I was glowing because of her radiance. Like, wow. Like, whoa, this is crazy. She is so beautiful. I mean, on a bride's wedding day, everything's perfect. There's someone to do the hair. There's someone to do the makeup. The dress is perfect. Everything is as perfect as it can be. And Christ prepares and presents his bride as perfect. The church is disappointing at times. And the church has hurt people. But the church is still the bride of Christ. My and your idealism about the church is not wrong. It's not wrong because Christ made her holy and blameless. And the church is like nothing else in the world. It should cross political ideologies. It's not contained with any kind of geographical border. It remains timeless, and the church throughout history has been a gathering for the followers of Jesus. A person can belong to the local church and at the same time be a part of this big, big global church that extends throughout time. And the church revolutionizes how we think about family. Family is no longer biological. Family is his community. And it doesn't matter your ethnic background, your economic background, or your social structure. The church becomes our new family. It's God's household. It's his body. And so it's refreshing to belong to a body where everyone is on equal footing, isn't it? And we can do away with the ethnicities, and we can do away with some of the perceived social economic structure. And in Ephesians 4, Paul says that Christ is the head of that body. Paul says in Ephesians 4, 15 and 16, that growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church, he makes the whole body fit together. And so by speaking the truth in love, we mature into him. We grow up. And it's this weird picture that Paul paints that we grow to him and from him at the same time. He's describing this process of growing into Christ, maturing into Christ's likeness. And at the same time, Jesus is the source of that growth. So what I'm about to say, I may not be agreed upon by all, and that's okay. I hope at least it will make you think. And I'm trying to push as much as I can push without crossing any line. But I wonder if the reason that the relationship is complicated, and perhaps the reason for so much church hurt, is the fact that the Western church has lost sight of growing into Christ. Is it possible that we are more consumed with growing? I've been in literally hundreds of hours of leadership meetings and elders meetings in big and small churches without question. I wish I'd have kept track. Without question, almost the entirety of those meetings were consumed with different aspects of growing, not growing into Christ. It's a narrow line, isn't it? Growing and growing into Christ. And I get the tension. I understand the tension. People that are consumed with church growth will make the argument that they are just concerned about reaching more people for Christ. And I appreciate the heart behind that thinking, but this is where I personally line up with C.S. Lewis. Lewis says, in the same way, the church exists for nothing else but to draw people into Christ, to make them little Christ. If they are not doing that, all the cathedrals, clergy, missions, sermons, and even the Bible itself are simply a waste of time. God became man for no other purpose. I get the difficulty. I mean, it's difficult to gauge whether or not someone is maturing into Christ. It's much easier to focus on outreach and small groups and buildings and tithing than growing into Christ. But as we grow into Him, we look more like Him. We reflect more of His image. Maturity means that we don't argue about preferences. I'm replaying the meetings where there have been multiple hours of arguments about music and carpet and paint. Like, really? The general term that we use today to describe what Paul is talking about is spiritual formation. Growing into Christ-likeness, maturing into Christ. The spiritual formation movement came into the American church in around 1978. Do you know why? Because the church was doing a lot of activity, but maturing few. And so Dallas Willard was once asked this question: why is it that spiritual formation seems to remain on the fringe of the Protestant church? What are the barriers to spiritual formation taking root in the American church? Dallas's two-word response to that question was this. Are you ready for it? Our ecclesiology. Remember, our ecclesiology is doctrine and teaching about the church. His basic point was this: if adequate knowledge of spiritual formation is not able to pierce the structures of the way we do church, our ecclesiology, then spiritual formation will remain on the outside of our institutions, and will eventually fade away. Imagine that. The very thing that we are supposed to do disappearing. Dallas continues, and he says it's hard today for pastors and leaders to form this intention and begin to put it into practice. Generally speaking, this is because they do not know how to make the church a context of honest spiritual formation. And they fear that if they try to, they will fail by the current standards of success. Failing for doing what we should do. I think he's right. The pressure for the church leader to be successful is beyond comprehension in today's American church culture. But also the church and its leaders, just like Israel, are wooed by lovers. Multiple lovers makes for a complicated relationship. I've never tried to balance it, but can you imagine 2 or 3 or 4 girlfriends, boyfriends, trying to manage all that? That gets pretty intense. It takes a lot of focus and intention. Hear me on this. It takes a lot of focus and intention not to be wooed by someone who thinks you're hot. Right? As followers of Jesus, we belong to the bride. Our relationship with her will be complicated. Until tell us there will be probability of hurt, but you can't give up on the bride. We can't blame the bride for not being the king. She doesn't always look like it, but she is beautiful. Christ has made it so. as followers of Jesus, we conform to him. Don't give up on Jesus because of the church. Press into him, tell him about your hurts. I don't think it will surprise him by telling him that the bride has hurt you. But keep this in mind. You belong to the same bride.
Hallelujah. For the Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready.
Okay, if y'all stand back up, we have one more song.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope or light. Till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. And a virgin came the word from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Jesus, for our sake, you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings.
MCC, it is good to come together to worship the King, to give praise and glory and honor to the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And we go from this place with the hope that Jesus is with us, with the hope that Jesus is coming for his bride, but also that the Spirit gives us strength to be his church. So go from this place, go enjoy lunch, and be the church here and now, and go to serve the church well.